Hi, this is Ambi from Board Game Blitz, and today I'm going to show you how to play Arkwright. The goal of the game is to own the most valuable portfolio, determined by the value and quantity of your stock. The game consists of 5 rounds or decades. Each round consists of 4 cycles. In each cycle, the factories of the specific good will produce food, clothes, cutlery, or lamps. Each cycle, some fired workers get returned to the job market and the neutral importer marker of the active good moves up. Beginning with the start player and proceeding clockwise, every player must pay money to place a new action marker from their supply onto an empty space in their section of the administration chart, or reuse an already placed marker. You may choose not to carry out the actual action, but you must still pay the administration cost. When placing a marker, you must pay the exact cost depending on the row you put the marker. For example, I can place this action marker on one of these open spaces. If I place here, I pay £4 in administration costs. Instead of placing a new marker, you can use a previously placed one by paying the same fee plus £2. However, this additional fee is never counted when calculating the administration cost spent for the action. The factory action allows you to build, modernize, or close factories. You may do so as often and in any order that you want. To build a factory, you can only choose factories of the current and earlier development level. You cannot have more than one of the same kind of factory. You place the factory marker on the space and pay the cost shown on the marker. Then you take as many workers from the job market in order to fill the first production column. Whenever you take workers for any action, you always take in reading order, left to right, top to bottom. You can modernize an existing factory to a factory of the current development level or below, paying the full cost for each upgraded level. For example, if I have a level 1 factory and we're in the 1800 decade, I can modernize to a level 3 factory. First I pay £11 for the level 2 factory and then £13 for the level 3. You can close down a factory by removing all workers, markers, and machines to the supply. Workers are placed back in the fired worker space. You cannot close factories that have been built during the same action, nor can you build a factory of the same kind and level that you just closed. Every action marker allows an additional action, indicated by the symbol below. After the factory action, you may adjust the prices of any factory that you built or modernized, changing the appeal accordingly. The quality of your factory and the price of your goods determine the appeal of your goods, which is used to calculate how many goods you can sell. Initial appeal is determined by the price, or quality of the factory, minus the price of the goods. You must set the prices of any factories you built, and set the appeal indicators to the correct value. You can adjust the prices of your goods from a minimum of 5 to a max of 25. Appeal can never be less than 0. The worker action allows you to hire and or fire workers. You can hire as many workers as you want from the job market and immediately place them however you like on the production columns of your factories. You can also add workers into the warehouse, placing them next to a row or column. If there are no workers left in the job market, take workers from the fired workers spot. If that space is empty too, then you cannot hire any more workers. Full production columns allow factories to produce goods, and a warehouse row or column occupied by a worker allows you to store excess goods. You may also freely move workers around within the warehouse when you take this action. You can fire as many workers in your factories as you want, as long as they are not from the first production column. They go into the fired workers spot. You must always fire from the rightmost production column first. If there are no workers in the column, you must also return machinery. You cannot fire workers that you just hired in the same action, and vice versa. You cannot fire workers with this action from your warehouse or ships. As an additional action, you can take a special marker, a gray action marker, a brown development tile, or a blue ship. These tokens allow you to perform better actions or give you passive abilities. You can take markers even if you didn't do the action. You can only take action markers from the current level or lower. These actions are like your starting action markers, but better. You can only have 4 development tiles at a time, but you can switch them out when you take a new one. These are generally passive abilities unless they have a red star besides them, which means it is one-time use. Discarded tiles are returned back to the supply. For both action markers and development tiles, you cannot take 2 of the exact same tile. Light gray and dark gray are considered different. When you take a ship, place it on your harbor mat. If there are worker symbols on the ship, take those workers from the job market and put them on the mat as crew. If there aren't enough workers, you cannot take that ship. You can only own 2 ships at a time. If you have 2 ships, you can replace one only if a new ship has higher capacity than the one you are replacing. Then you put the new ship in the spot of the old one, and you only take the additional amount of workers needed. If you replace the ship that's on administration, if you use that new ship in the same round, the admin cost must be enough for that ship. You can replace workers in your factories with machines to save money. The amount of money you pay in administration is used to determine how many machines you can buy. For example, if I go on this space and pay £6 admin, I can get 2 machines. If I go on this space, I still can only get 2 machines for the £8 I pay. You immediately place your machines. Each machine must replace an existing worker, and only if the space indicates it is allowed. As an additional action, you can take a new special marker. You can permanently increase the quality of your goods, which increases their appeal. The amount of administration cost you pay determines how many levels you can advance the quality. For multiple levels, you can use it on the same factory or different factories. Place or rotate the quality marker to indicate the new quality level to a maximum of 4. Your new factory quality is the factory cost plus the quality marker, so your appeal will adjust. You can temporarily increase the quality of your goods by placing a distribution tile. You can use administrative costs up to the maximum indicated on the distribution tile for this action, and you can distribute the costs among as many factories as you want. For each distribution level increase, it costs the level of the new distribution marker. For example, to increase the distribution in this factory from level 1 to level 3 costs 2 plus 3, or 5 pounds in administration cost. Distribution levels have the same effect on quality and appeal as quality levels, but you must decrease the distribution one level after each time that the factory produces. For both the quality action and distribution action, you can then adjust the prices of the goods in the factories which you upgraded. Additionally, if you have unspent administration costs, you can spend 1 pound per extra factory you want to adjust. For example, for my previous distribution action, if I had paid 6 pounds administration but only used 5 for this factory, then after I adjust the price and appeal of this factory, I could use the extra pound to allow me to adjust the price and appeal of my other factory. With the stock exchange tile, you can buy or sell stock, repay loans, sell goods from the warehouse, and acquire shipping contracts in any order. You can buy as many of your own shares from the bank by paying the price indicated on the stock tracker per share. The minimum price is £10, so you still have to pay 10 to buy your stock if it's below the 10 space. If you have a loan, you have to repay loans before you can buy any stock. Each loan costs £13 to be repaid. You can sell as many shares as you want. You get per share the value located on the stock track, even if it's below 10. Selling shares with this action does not cause the stock price to go down. You can sell as many goods from your warehouse as you want at a fixed price. Food is £2, clothes is 3, cutlery is 4, and lamps is 5. You can acquire new contracts for shipping by placing them on the harbor mat. You can also increase existing contracts up to the maximum, but you cannot decrease them. You may have as many contracts as you want on any space. For example, I could place this contract on the 4 space, increase this one to the 4 space, and place another one on the 2 space. The contracts are commitments for shipping these quantities of goods. You can then take a special marker. If you have a ship, you can choose to ship goods and fulfill contracts obtained with the stock action. You can only use one ship in the goods from your warehouse when doing this action. You must pay administration costs equal to or greater than the size of the ship and move your stock down 1 space for using a ship. Then you choose 1 or more contracts to fulfill. You must fulfill the entire contract at once by paying the matching goods. When you fulfill a contract, you get money equal to the cost of your factory per each good, and then the contract marker goes back to your personal supply. For example, if I have food and lamp contracts at size 2 and a size 4 ship, I can ship both of them. I place the ship here, pay £4 in administration, and spend 2 food and 2 lamps from my warehouse to fulfill the contracts. Then I get 2 times 8 plus 2 times £11 from the bank. Then you can take a special marker. If you have a production action marker, you can produce goods in any one factory. After placing the tile, you choose a factory and how many production columns from left to right to produce with, limited by the capacity shown on the production marker. You can only produce in a column if it is full of workers and or machines. The factory produces a certain amount of goods for those production columns, depending on the factory and the level, and you need to store them in the warehouse, discarding extras. You must then pay for all the workers and machines that were in the production columns you used, £1 per machine, and the price per worker indicated by the row of the lowest open space on the job market. For example, with this level 1 to 2 tile, I can only produce in the first 2 production columns, so I produce 2 plus 3, or 5, bread, which I can store in my warehouse. Then I pay £3 for each of my workers in those 2 columns, plus £1 per machine for a total of £10. After the production action, you can then adjust prices and appeal in the factory that you used to produce. After each player has done one action, the factories corresponding to the active good produce. You cannot pass on producing and selling from factories. Before production, check that the appeal for the factories of the active good are correct. Production is like the production action except all your columns produce. For example, if bread is the active good, then because I have 3 columns filled, I will produce 2 plus 3 plus 3, or 8 goods. For each open numbered space on the job market, there is a demand for that good. Each player can sell a maximum number of goods equal to their appeal. To determine how much each player sells, you can use goods tokens to represent the demand and distribute them to players in order. Starting with the highest appeal, everyone at that appeal or higher, including the neutral importer, sells a good. Then you subtract the appeal by 1 and everyone with that appeal sells a good, and so on. If you sold as many goods as you produced, you can choose to sell stored, matching goods from your warehouse, but you don't have to, and you can pass. Selling from your factories is mandatory. Once you've sold up to your appeal or passed, you can't sell anymore. Continue distributing the demand until everyone has sold their max or passed or the demand is gone. If there isn't enough demand, ties go to the player who has the most appeal, with the importer going last. If players have tied appeal, the sale goes to whoever has higher quality, and if it's still a tie, all tied players get to sell. For example, during the bread cycle, red and blue will produce and sell, while the other 2 players will not produce or sell since they have no factories. The demand is 10. Red can produce 2 goods and blue can produce 6. The goods are sold as follows. Red sells 1, then red and blue each sell 1. Since red cannot produce anymore, they cannot sell anymore. If red had bread in their warehouse, they could choose to sell it. Now blue and the neutral black each sell 1. This continues twice more until there is 1 more demand. Since blue has higher appeal than black, blue sells the last good. Blue sold 5 goods, so they have 3 left over from production. Leftover produced goods can be shipped or stored in open spaces of the warehouse. When you sell, you get money equal to the price times the goods you sold. Each player who sold 1 good must increase their share by 1. Each player who has sold 2 or more goods increases their share again. If a single player has the most appeal, including the importer, and they sold at least 1 good, they increase their share again. If a single player sold the most, they go up 1. Ties don't count. Then you pay all workers and machines in the active factory even if they didn't produce. Machines cost £1 each and workers cost £2 to £5 each, depending on the lowest open space on the job market. Next, the temporary distribution markers are reduced by 1 and appeal is adjusted. If the appeal is now less than 0, the price must be adjusted so that the appeal is 0 and the share value of the company is reduced by 1. Now players have a chance to fulfill contracts of the active good. Using up to 2 ships, you can fulfill the contract of the active good similar to the previous shipping section, except you don't have to pay administration cost, and your capacity is the sum of both your ships if you use both. Note that if you use 2 ships, you need to move your stock marker back 2 spaces, 1 per ship. The contract is removed after being completed, and you get money equal to the cost of your factory for each good. Contracts of the active good that are unfulfilled are now increased by 1 space. If the contract was already on the last space, it remains there and the player must move their stock down 2 spaces. Finally, you can store excess goods on your warehouse. In order to store a good on the warehouse, you need a worker in the appropriate column or row. For example, if I had these workers in the warehouse, I could store 3 of each good, plus 5 more bread. Any goods you cannot store get returned to the supply without compensation. The cycle ends and the starting player goes clockwise. After the 4th cycle, the round ends. When the round ends, all players receive their played action tiles back, pay wages for the workers in the warehouse and on ships, choose to fire those workers, and an event happens. One of these events will be bureaucracy, which blocks the £2 administration space for everyone for the rest of the game. The player with the least valuable stock portfolio determines the new start player. At the beginning of decades 1790 and 1810, some factories become obsolete, indicated here. In each factory that is obsolete, you must hire 2 workers from the fired workers space, placing them next to the factory. They may not be fired and must be paid whenever the factory produces. After upgrading an obsolete factory to the current level, the extra workers are placed in the fired workers space. In the last round, 1810, if you place workers on a factory that has already been activated that round, place a worker from the first column onto the factory icon to indicate they have not been used. If you produce with that factory, which you can only do with the gray production action marker, then you move the worker back. You still use the first production row regularly. If you don't produce, you'll lose shares at the end of the game for workers on the factory icon. This rule prevents players from creating an artificial demand. If you do not have enough cash for an action or cost, you must emergency sell shares to do that action. You cannot sell more than required. For each share sold, the stock goes down by the first digit. For example, if I wanted to build factories for £25 and I had no money, I need to sell 2 of my shares at £19 each to get £38. Then, since I'm on space 28, I move the share price down 2 per share I sold, so it goes down to the 24 space. If you don't have any shares but need money, you can get a £10 loan by placing shares from the bank on the stock track. Then move the stock value down by 1 for each loan taken. The stock track cannot go lower or higher than min or max value. At the end of the game, each player gets 1 final stock action, allowing them to sell any goods from the warehouse and buy as many stocks as they can. For each factory that has a worker on the factory marker from not producing, you lose 4 spaces in stock and return 2 shares to the bank. For each contract you haven't fulfilled, you move your stock back as much as the value of the contract. Anyone with loans loses the game. The winner is determined solely by value of portfolio, the number of shares multiplied by your stock value. The tiebreaker is cash. And that's how you play Arkwright. Check out the link for setup and tile explanation. Check out our website for more videos, podcasts, and blogs. Thanks for watching Board Game Blitz!